You're listening to the Hindu Business Line's Field Notes podcast with T.R. Vivek.
Hello, dear listeners, and welcome to another episode of Field Notes, the Hindu Business Line's weekly podcast on all things agribusiness. I'm your host, T.R. Vivek. The dairy industry is often held up as a great Indian agri success story. India is home to nearly 540 million heads of livestock animals, including cows, buffaloes, goats, and camel. That's nearly 11% of the cattle population of the world, housed in roughly 2.4% of the world's land mass. India is the world's largest milk producer with an annual production of about 190 million tons. But here's where the good news kind of comes to an end. India's milk productivity is about 50% less than global averages. Indian cattle produce only an average of 1,000 kilos of milk per lactation cycle compared to 7,000 kilos in Europe and a staggering 10,000 kilos in tiny arid Israel. In the dairy industry, what you feed the animal is what determines the quality and quantity of milk. Feedstock accounts for nearly 70% of the cost of milk production, and India has an acute feedstock crisis. The land available for fodder production has remained stagnant at around 5% of the arable land for decades. The cattle population and demand for milk keeps burgeoning. According to an Indian Council for Agricultural Research estimate in 2019, there is about a 12% gap between the demand for green fodder and its availability. Lack of fodder means India's dairy farmers are operating at only 50% of their potential. A new and young Bangalore-based startup called Hydrogreens, founded by the 38-year-old civil engineering graduate Vasant Madhav Kamath, is trying to address this crisis with a unique model that he calls fodder as a service for farmers who cannot afford to grow it themselves. Hydrogreens grows the green fodder in a low-cost, microclimate-controlled vertical farming system that can ensure the year-round availability of fresh, pesticide-free, high-protein green fodder and can operate, he claims, in conditions where temperatures range from 40 to 50 degrees Celsius with just half a bucket of water. Welcome, Vasant, to Field Notes.
Thank you. Thank you, Vivek. Honored to be here.
Thank you very much for joining us today. Vasant, tell us how you stumbled upon this problem of fodder crisis and how real or big is the fodder crisis in India's dairy industry.
Yeah, I think, this was when I was doing my previous project with the retailer, was trying to grow cotton in vertical farming methods. Cotton has the same or sort of bad record for water footprint. A kg of cotton could take anywhere between 6 to 10,000 liters of water, and it's a 7-month crop. We're the second largest exporter of cotton, and so we are actually sending virtual water to other countries and having to have double the food production in the background of depleting groundwaters, right? So the challenge was to see if we could grow that 7-month crop with 500 liters of water throughout that 7-month period, using hydroponics and nutrient film techniques and whatnot. We were successful after 2 or 3 years of tremendous struggle in terms of figuring out the entire equation. It was pretty complex. But while doing that project, one of the ladies there came and asked, hey, I wanted this at my field. And we sort of poo-pooed her at that time. But then later on, we realized that she was really trying to solve a problem for herself, which was shortage of fodder. And that was the first time I really stumbled upon this. And I started.
So she looked at the plants stacked in your sort of trays, the vertical trays. Yes. That you were trying to grow.
Yes, she was a casual labor at the warehouse. It was a very massive warehouse in an industrial area in Mysore, and she was looked at that. She was awe-inspired with what was going on. A lot of pink lights and huge racks, and some cotton plants had grown really tall. So when we went to the farm, we saw that she had done some scaffolding and she was trying to grow fodder in it. And that was very surprising because
She
Mysore
copied
has
the
got,
idea from you. I mean, having looked at what you were trying to do, and she tried to replicate that at her farm.
yes, kind of. I mean, with, just scaffolding, somebody can do a small scaffolding and try to grow in it. But, the idea was that she was trying to solve it. She was so entrepreneurial. She was doing multiple jobs at the same time. And she wanted to solve this problem for herself. What was surprising is this was happening in Mysore, which had a lot of paddy belts in that region, Kaveri flows. There's a lot of ample water available. It was hard to imagine that there was such a massive fodder shortage there. So that's when I started digging around and finding out what's really the problem. And I was shocked to see that year after year, the governments have been giving notifications to state governments to take measures on, setting up fodder security programs or whatnot. In some districts, moving fodder is banned. So the level of challenge is very high across India, and that's when I discovered this problem.
How acute is the problem? You described about even the bans on moving fodder from one district to another. How does it hamper the dairy industry? What kind of challenges does the lack of fodder present, and why is there a lack of fodder?
Right. See, there is three types of fodder or feed inputs that are fed. Mainly three types. One is the dry fodder. Second is the green fodder, and
the dry fodder would be the straws that
wheat straw, paddy straw.
Yeah.
But the principal ingredient is the green fodder, which is, so if let's say the cows or the buffalo's body weight is 400 kgs, you approximately feed 10%. So 40 kgs is the total feed input that you have to feed every day. Of that, 20 to 25 kgs is green fodder, followed by about 6 to 7 of dry fodder, and then rest of it feed concentrate and mineral mixtures in whatever specific
like oil cakes.
Correct. Cottonseed oil cake, groundnut, coconut. There are multiple amazing industrial residues available. So the fodder shortage is happening because of multiple reasons. One of the foremost is climate change, where you have more dry periods now, or longer dry periods. And even in the rainy season, you get a lot of rain within a short span of time. So you have extreme events that are occurring more repeatedly. That's one. There is depleting groundwater. If you've heard of bore wells in Maharashtra, they're all going 1,200, 1,900 and more, even in parts of Karnataka as well. So bore wells are not getting replenished well. And there are more and more bore wells coming in, which is not helping either. So depleting, then there is fragmentation of land holding, right? Average land holding is just about 2 hectares right now, and it's shrinking further and further. And there are many other factors also, like desertification, overuse of chemicals on ground, etc., right? But now, in terms of the acuteness, if you look at India, South India is mostly rain-fed. Thankfully, there are no extreme climate events like that in, say, in Delhi. Like you have, or Delhi or Rajasthan, you have extreme summer, you have extreme winter, right? Here it is partly because we are protected by the sea on both sides, and so you don't have that extreme climate vagaries. And the fodder shortage tends to be for around 5 months. The acute fodder shortage tends to be around for 5 months. That goes from, say, January till about May. Right. And after that, if it is there, it is due to either a labor problem, a shortage of machinery, or the land is very far off, so on and so forth. But in the northwest central India and some parts of northeast also, the shortage is for much longer period, like 7 months, 8 months. And it is very surprising that despite this, the dairy industry has been, being very resilient and trying to fight this. But what you said at the beginning, that the productivity levels are very low, is as a result of poor feed management practices, right? That's the impact there.
So what were the traditional sources of green fodder in an earlier era? And what are you as a company, what are you trying to do? I hear the word feed as a service. Is it Bangalore
Fodder
tech
as a service.
fodder as a service? Is it Bangalore tech talk gone rogue, or what is the service?
No, so okay, I'll answer the question. First question. See, typically earlier they used to have what is called in Kannada as gomalas, or there are places which are dedicated for grazing of animals. In Rajasthan, even today, for the pastoralists that go from one place to another, there's dedicated land that becomes fruitful during the very limited monsoon season there. Now all of that is gone. Okay, that's one. Second, large areas are going for cash crops or commercial crops, the residue of which is not so green. Like if you take maize, for example, maize is produced in Bagalkot and Bihar, you know, to a great extent. And by the time you harvest the maize, the plant would have completely dried and it's not at all green. Okay, so it's still okay, it's still consumable, but the nutritional profile is entirely different, right? There are laid down guidelines as to what should be a mixed balance ration for the cattle to perform at its full genetic potential, and that is not available. So we said, hey, this problem is huge. It is affecting 70 million plus dairy farmers, and the frequency is also very high. So could we look at what kind of technologies can help solve this? Because we know that there will be a revenue impact on this. They were losing about 15 to 25% of dairy income. And if we were to give a good sustainable intervention, then there would be some impact. So we looked at, we're actually looking at a host of solutions, but we started with hydroponics and fogponics to begin with. And we gave small sachet-like instruments where farmers could grow for themselves and create high protein fodder right next to them, right? Over the period of time, we realized that there are challenges in accessing the seeds required for inputting into the system, because the seeds are not available in the same quality throughout the year, right? So an individual farmers having control of that supply chain is a little difficult. So we felt, and especially during the second wave, we were thinking that whatever we do, the price point of the systems are sometimes not accessible to the farmers. What can we do so that it is more accessible, right? That's when we came up with a model or idea called as the fodder station. Right. The fodder station is where we actually grow the fodder and sell it directly to the farmers, and that's what we call as fodder as service. And this is co-located to a milk collection center. So for farmers, it is very easy for them to come and pick it up in the morning and evening, every day. We tested and tried it, and Chitradurga got some very good results, and we are scaling it up in Rajasthan and in a couple of other parts of Northeast and throughout India. We probably would even be franchising this to self-help groups or cooperatives, because we can't really we don't have the bandwidth to scale up in every region. Right? So that's the fodder as service, and it provides a wonderful opportunity for locals to participate in that.
So just help our listeners and viewers visualize what you're talking about. So you grow this fodder in vertical farms, say these plastic trays of the size of 1 foot by 1 foot, stacked one upon the other in greenhouse-like conditions.
Correct. So mind you that the backdrop of our performance is during summer. So right. We had to operate in extreme climatic background. So we had to think about, hey, can we do this even at 45 to 50 degrees? Later, we discovered we had to even work at 0 degrees in Rajasthan and also in Northeast. So thankfully, with some tweaking of technologies, we've been able to grow it throughout the year in Rajasthan. And now we are doing that in Meghalaya as well, where the climate is entirely different. See, there have been a lot of iterations in the technology. I'll not go into the details, but Basically what happens is you take a seed, you sprout it, and you transfer it directly onto a tray. There is no medium, zero medium.
Meaning
And
there's no soil.
there is no soil. Um, and the seeds are directly put after they are sprouted, and within 7 days they grow to about 1.2 feet high, which is much faster. I think about 7 days faster than it were to grow the same height on the ground, and with almost 99% less water, right? On our system, it would take about 3 to 5 liters for a kg of fodder to grow. And probably on the ground, it would be about 130 liters of water. So there's a quantum amount of savings of water. And you're basically bringing out all the goodness of the seed, which is, and all the nutrients that are ready for digesting. So what we call that as TDN, or the digestible nutrients that are readily available for the cattle. And so the crude protein is also much better than the fodder that is grown on the ground. So as a result of that, the cattle would give you anywhere between 1 to 3 liters more milk. And you also have an opportunity to reduce on feed concentrate, right? So in the systems now, there are sprinklers, there are micro sprinklers that spray water for just about few seconds every hour. And this is over a period of time, we will deploy certain algorithms to make it even more precise. But depending on the temperature, we decide how much should you spray, what is the frequency of spraying, such that there is no water at all at the root zone. Everything is absorbed by the plants.
Vasant, give us a sense of the fodder economics. How expensive is it? How much does it cost a farmer on a daily or weekly basis in terms of green fodder? And with fodder as a service from your company, how much is the amount they save? Or how expensive is it? Because you may be using modern methods. I don't know how expensive the cost of production at your end might be.
See, there are three main items here. One, earlier, if you were to buy green fodder from the ground, from a neighboring ground, it used to cost you around 2 rupees, 1.5 to 2 rupees. Depends on region by region. There's no hard and fast data or study on that, but this is what we have found from our field studies. And in our system, in the Kambali system, if you were to grow it yourself, the cost of production for yourself is roughly about 2.5 rupees, right? So it's comparable, so to say, with what you would get from the ground. Slightly expensive on the system. Now, all of this depends upon what is the seed price.
But is that cost taking into account the savings on water?
No, I mean, we're not taking that cost. I mean,
because
water is very negligible.
As you described, there is a quantum sort of decrease in the water requirement.
Yeah,
with your system.
Yeah, so we've not taken that and not taken the energy required by the motor. If you have a 5 HP motor that is running on your farm and you have to flood the acre every week, we've not taken all of that into account. But typically people sell it at 2.5 rupees, which is the same when you do a production. But the thing is, seed availability, the maize seed has to be available to you between 12 to 20 rupees, right? That's when it is brilliantly economical. Even at 25, you could stretch it a little bit, but not beyond that, right? So that is the main catch there. Now, if we were to grow and sell it, we are selling it at roughly about 7 rupees a kg, compared to, if you were to grow it yourself. So the reason being, we have a greenhouse, you have a dedicated team for that. There's multiple different technologies, and there's a lot of convenience added. We probably would deliver it to your place.
So that's roughly 3 times more than the cost of fodder if a farmer were to buy it from the market,
or do it themselves.
Yeah.
Right. There is no fodder availability right now to buy it from the market. Green fodder, no. Dry fodder, yes. Okay. Now, dry fodder also, landing cost per kg is roughly 9 rupees to, during the season, it goes to 13 rupees. So it's very expensive. Dry fodder is even more expensive. and you know, dry fodder doesn't add much on the productivity. It's just a lot of fiber. It probably ends up contributing more into methane and indigestion. Anyways, so here in the fodder station, because it is a service delivered to you, delivered to your home, and you know, on demand, completely grown for you, you have no headache, etc., etc. Let me take that case and tell you how it is still economical, right? We have got a lot of data recorded from our customers. On an average, they've reported about 1.8 liters increase in milk at a, a procurement price of, let's say, 30 rupees per liter. That comes to about 54 rupees incremental revenue, right? Then there is potential reduction of feed concentrate, which is roughly around 18 rupees. So a total of 72 rupees can be earned by the farmer every day per cattle. The cost of purchase of a tray. Now, this tray we had designed so that there is optimal feed given to the cattle, because we've studied that if you give beyond, say, 7 or 8 kgs, there's not much appreciable incremental milk, right?
7 or 8 kgs a day.
Yes. 7-8 kgs of this hydroponic fodder as a supplement. If you give more than that, there is not, you know, an appreciable increase in milk. So we've designed the tray in such a way that you get around 5 to 7 kgs in each tray, which is optimal that you could feed. One tray per cattle is more than enough. And the cost of a tray is roughly about $40. So 72 minus 40, net profit is 32 rupees every day per cattle, right? And for a lactation period of 200 days, we could add about 60,000 plus more revenue for the farmer, despite the adverse conditions, with low water footprint, with low methane footprint, and even reducing the drudgery for them.
Right. Vasant, tell us how much space do you need? What is the productivity that you have growing maize in vertical farming?
See, it's 4 to 5 times more, and it's also more faster. So, you know, our individual system is roughly about 4 feet by 3 feet on ground. That's the area that would take. And in that, every day we would be able to get every day, right, about 20 kgs, right? Compared to on ground, it would take you 70 days to slightly get, you know, the same or more amount of fodder, right? So the productivity is definitely much higher, because you're
and how
doing
much
more...
land would you need in the conventional method?
So so typically a farmer in their 2 or 3 hectares would reserve 1/3 or roughly about 23,000 square feet of area for fodder. We need just 2,000 square feet to grow around half a ton every day. We can deliver every day. So the design is such a way, because it takes 7 days, and we have different designs on how that every day half ton, you know, or roughly about 0.7 700 kgs of fodder can be delivered every day, and it can support 96 cattle. Every fodder station can support 96 cattle every day.
So, Vasant, tell us about your operations currently. You mentioned you're present in Rajasthan and Karnataka and some parts of the Northeast. So, how many farmers have become your subscribers for this service? So,
see, we've not done any sort of advertising, any sort of marketing so far, right, because we were at the beginning, we were very skeptical. Would farmer buy? You know, what would the price point they would buy? And, you know, would there be a word of mouth effect, all of that? And our first attempt was in Chittadurga fodder station. So this concept came in during the second pandemic. Right from the day we've started operations, first year, first pandemic, second year, second wave, third year, and now we're in the third wave. So we've constantly been fighting against the pandemic. But we still tried this. We had a lot of challenges in the right at the onset in terms of growing, because we'd never done growing at so high volumes before, right? All of our volumes were very low. Now you are doing almost half a ton every day. So if anything goes wrong, you'll have to start over again, and it takes 7 days to get the results. What we learned was this poly house, the way you select, the way you design the poly house is a do or die battle, right? It is extremely, because a lot of consultant experts who would say A, B, and C, and D, but on the ground, when the rubber hits the road, there's a lot of failures, especially with rats and squirrels. We had a lot of challenges. And so we fixed all of it one by one, and we're able to get a consistent harvest output every day. That was the reason where we were losing the customers, because we were in the business of predictability, right? So a farmer would say, yes sir, I will come and take it, I like this, I got the results, I want this daily. We weren't able to give it daily. There were breaks in between because something broke, and then the farmer made another arrangement, right? So same thing with many other people also. We weren't able to deliver it consistently, but we found out all the issues and have fixed it, and we took the next leap of challenge to do this in Rajasthan with all the learnings we had in Chitradurga. Chitradurga is also a very dry and arid region, by the way. I mean, annual rainfall less than 400 mm. So we went to Rajasthan, and this is in Bikaner, Bajju, very close to Falodi, which receives the highest temperature in India for the longest duration. So we chose materials very locally, we increased the height. So here in Chitradurga, we at the moment have roughly about 10 to 20 farmers who are taking our fodder every day. And in Rajasthan, it has been used by a dairy for themselves. There are more indigenous cattle there. So the yield is not that high, but the fat content is very high. It's a Rathi breed. So the fat content dropped because they did not have green fodder at all there. But after our intervention, they've been consistently getting 5 to 5.5 fat. And since they're in the business of ghee and buttermilk only, this sort of fits very well for them, right? And we are setting up another one in Rajasthan, in Falodi, exactly the place where I told you it's very tough to work in those regions, because you have dust storms, you have wind, you have sometimes sudden rain for one day, and a lot of water that will clog up on the roofs, and unknown challenges. I think it's been quite a few months now. We'll see what is to come there.
Right. Vasant, what is the commercial opportunity here? It's all fine, you're making farmers help earn a little more, or sort of 25-30% more, but as a business, how do you see this going? What is the commercial potential here?
See, for the fodder station, I'll give you an example before I talk about the commercial potential. When we were speaking to a few FPOs and SHGs in Ahmedabad or in Gujarat, they said, sir, we are in the business of agarbattis. We do agarbattis here, and we take the bus and go far off places and try and sell it. And, if you're not getting the rate, we're losing the margin in the transport and all of that. So the beauty of the business is you are catering to a very hyper local community that's already thriving. The milk collection center is thriving. There are active members who are putting 20 liters every day. So you have ready-made customers right outside your fodder station shop. You don't have to go far out at all. As that's our preliminary condition, that the fodder station is within 500 meters of a milk collection center. That said, you have 6 or 7 months where you can constantly bring more farmers to fodder station. You can easily sell high protein fodder to them. As I've told you, that there is definite impact that the farmers realize with this. And in dry and arid regions, it works really wonderful, right? Now, there could be lean periods, non-lean periods, where sometimes you might have rainy season and the perception is, okay, we have green fodder, we don't need to purchase it right now, or you might have winter where the same perception may or may not continue. In the fodder station, we have flexibility, and we have recommended 2 alternate crops that you can try: wheatgrass and oyster mushrooms. right? Wheatgrass can be dried, grown just like fodder. You could cut the leaves, dry it and powder it. And that goes to pharmaceutical companies, or it could go into health biscuits, so on and so forth. And we are creating that market linkages for that. Oyster mushroom, again, could be dried. You don't have to sell it wet. You can dry it and store it and then aggregate it and sell it, right? And we're also bringing market linkages for that. And we'll have a very soon buyback program for all of these commodities. These fodder stations are franchised under our name. So we wouldn't recommend you to grow anything else. Like, suppose you'd say, I want to grow lettuce. We'd say no, because, the economics of that is very, very different. In vertical farming, we know what the thumb rules are, and we know what the technology is, and we are expert in these crops, and therefore we are recommending these 3 crops. And in the future, we will have more exciting crops to come in, and this forestation may take a different avatar. So for a capital, now this is entirely run on solar, because in the rural side at the moment, we cannot rely on the quality of electricity, especially the supply and the voltage surge and all of that. And the quantity is very high. Also, that you are not using the energy from grid, and we could call this carbon negative farming, right? You're not taking the energy from grid at all. You're using power very efficiently. So for a capital of about 16 lakhs, you are able to break even within 3 to 5 years. And the current IRR that we are looking at is at about 10 to 16%, right? Every month, if you're able to sell full capacity of fodder, your net profit is at about 30%. So I think it is a great proposition for people who want to make an impact back in their village, or even for anybody who wants to, really get into farming, serious farming, that impacts their community's life meaningfully, right? And we are 100% sure of the impact that the fodder would drive for the climate, for the environment, and for the farmer. And we're also very sure of the returns that you would get by helping such a community.
Right. And also meant market size in terms of, for a company like yours. Is there a large enough addressable market?
Yes, sir, very, very big. Sir, you said in the beginning, it's 500 million cattle. Each cattle requires a minimum of 20 kgs of green fodder. So you could multiply that number. It's very insane. See, there is, according to the Indian Grassland Institute, the requirement is around 800 to 1,000 million tons, of which the deficit at the moment is around 260 to 300 million tons. According to me, it's my own hypothesis that it is much more higher than that, because there is another industry that is coming to eat agriculture, which is the ethanol industry, right? And it requires a lot of feedstock to go into producing ethanol. I don't know to what extent we could continue to supply sugarcane, but I think more smarter feedstock need to be made available for this to sustain in the long run, if you want to go away from fossil fuels. So I see that also continuing to create a lot of challenges for dairy. And I think the market is very big.
Vasant, thank you very much for joining us today on Field Notes. Until we meet next week, goodbye and God bless.
Thank you.